Look, they're pouring in now. People from all over the world coming into our meeting here. And I'm just going to ask. So let's see, up to 40. So I am Dr. Ted Barnett. I'll say that again in another minute because people are still pouring in here. We're expecting at least 100 attendees. And I'm accompanied tonight by Dr. Susan Friedman, my partner in crime. And I sometimes refer to her as Professor Lifestyle. As you know, I'm Dr. Veggie, so we all have to have our monikers.
That's right.
Look at all these names coming in here. Nice. I was just kind of looking at the list earlier today, and I noticed there was somebody from Sweden, somebody from Bolivia. So very good. All right, looks like we're starting to slow down. This is like popcorn. As the popcorn starts to slow down, I feel like we're getting ready. If people could just remember, there is a chat, but we'd like you to all use the Q&A tonight. It would be great. You certainly can chat, but if you with each other, but if you want a question answered tonight afterwards, please put that in the Q&A. And so once again, I'd like to welcome everybody to a lecture in our Lifestyle as a Medicine lecture series. I'm Ted Barnett, the founder of Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. I'm accompanied tonight by Dr. Susan Friedman, who's our director of clinical studies and for the Institute, and the medical director for our medical practice. And she's also a professor at the University of Rochester. And also I'm very proud to say that she's also the lead author on the white paper of the American Geriatric Society, which came out a couple of years ago on healthy aging. So she's an expert in healthy aging. And so just to tell you a little bit about Rochester Lifestyle Medicine, we started back in 2015 to run CHIP programs, which is kind of a nice coincidence because our speaker tonight is one of the main characters in the CHIP series. CHIP stands for the Complete Health Improvement Program. It's been around since the 1990s. Oh, somewhere about around 70,000 people have taken it around the world. And it's a wonderful program. It's based on plant-based nutrition and healthy living generally. And it's started by Hans Diehl. I understand that Hans approached Dr. Darren Morton around 2009 or so to participate in helping him put together the latest version of CHIP, which is very elegantly done. So we do CHIP programs. We also run the LIFT project, which you're going to hear a lot about tonight. In fact, if you're interested, we have a CHIP program beginning on Tuesday, February 4th. It's available to anybody on the planet. It will be in English, so that's about the only caveat. You can be anywhere to participate, and you'll hear a lot about that tonight. We also run what we call our 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart. We've had about 700 people go through that. That's our very own creation, and we have combined that with a CME program, and Dr. Friedman is one of the lecturers in that CME program. She talks about healthy aging and coaching. And I don't know, Susan, you want to just mention a little bit about that while we have you here?
About?
Well, just what you talk about in your lectures.
Oh, yeah, well, just about some of the principles of healthy aging and how we make behavior changes, because you know, it's one thing to know what you're supposed to do, but then it's another thing to do it. So hopefully some helpful information about that as well.
Yeah, thanks. No, and Susan is great. If you're a physician or other healthcare practitioner who would like to get some CME credits, the whole program is worth 24 hours of CME, and that includes 10 hours of participating live with patients. So we've had a few doctors already go through it. A number of doctors have actually participated in the 15-day jumpstart, but we just got the CME, the total CME package going. The jumpstart's been around since 2018. And what else did I want to say about that? There was something and I forgot. Oh, I know, about behavior change. So, you know, what's really interesting, we've reached the point now where I believe that whole food plant-based nutrition is basically the healthiest diet for almost everybody. And that, you know, it's always good to have more scientific studies to prove that, but I believe we've got enough evidence and we just need to act on the evidence. And I think the research now needs to be done on how to help people with that behavior change, how to get people to behave in healthy ways. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker tonight, Dr. Darren Morton, who has his PhD in exercise physiology. And I just learned tonight also is the world's authority on the side stitch when you're running, the runner's stitch. And I've known Dr. Morton Darren since about 2015 when I saw him on the videotapes of the CHIP program. So Darren, would you like to appear magically? Press that. And it is 16 hours later where Darren is. He's in Australia, but it's about 11 o'clock in the morning there now, right?
It is, and I can let you guys know whoever, I think it's Sunday night for you at the moment. It's a beautiful day tomorrow, so that's
okay.
Something to look forward
to. Okay, excellent. But it's snowing here.
Oh.
But it's nice to know. So Darren, tell us what you're going to be talking about tonight.
So can I kick my slideshow off? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's share my screen with you. And we'll just make sure this is working. Okay, how are we going? Can you see that okay?
That's beautiful, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, well, I'm going to talk about this. What does it take to flourish? And, I want to just preface this by saying we're going to be talking about happiness. And I almost question whether that was the right thing to do at this moment in time, because I know that, globally, but especially in the US, there are some major challenges that you guys are facing. And, here in Australia and the land down under, we sort of view the US as our big brother in many ways. And so we're very closely connected and have a great interest in what's happening over there. And all I want to say is that we really feel for you all. We know there's some really challenging times. And in fact, Australians have never taken more interest in what's happening in the US than right now. And every morning we get up and we what happened last night in the US, how are they doing, how many cases of COVID, all those sorts of things. So anyway, just want to say that our hearts are really with you over there. For those of you, I know that we have some other people from other countries on tonight as well, which is fantastic. But for those particularly in the US, we're thinking of you. So given that there are some really tough times upon us, I didn't know whether it was appropriate to talk about this whole idea of, what does it take to flourish? But then I actually got to think about it. I thought, probably this is probably the most important message that we need to hear right now. And so the topic tonight is, what does it take to flourish? And you're about to learn that flourish isn't just sort of some fluffy sort of fleeting feeling. It's actually a deep construct that's used in the academic literature. And I'll talk with you a bit about that as I go. But before I start, by way of starting, I want to tell you about one of my favourite studies that has ever been done. And it was conducted by researchers from Harvard University. And it's actually about 10 years old now. But what they developed was an app. And the app was called Track My Happiness. And what this app did is would page buzz at random times throughout the course of the day. And people were asked 3 questions. And the 3 questions were, A, what are you doing right now? B, how do you feel right now on a scale of 0 to 100, with 0 being completely lousy, 1 being, yay, I couldn't imagine life any better than this. So what are you doing right now? How are you feeling right now? And the 3rd question was, are you thinking about something different to what you're actually doing right now? In other words, it was about assessing mind wandering, what was going on in that space. And so this is what they found. These are the results that came out. And it's quite insightful in terms of helping us to understand, what do people typically say helps them feel worse and what helps them feel better. And I know that this slide's a bit busy, that this is actually a screenshot out of the actual publication, but I think you should be able to see a faint line down the centre there. And what that represents is the average feeling score. And so anything on this side on the left side of that line represents what people were doing that made them feel less, or worse than average. And then on the upside, the right-hand side, was what made them feel better than average. So let's have a look what these are. So first of all, resting, sleeping fascinates me. Right? I actually would have thought that sleeping would have been right up there in terms of helping people to feel good. But then I thought probably it's got something to do with the logistics of the study. You imagine you're asleep and all of a sudden, this page goes off your app, like, what are you doing right now? It's like, was sleeping. And then, how are you feeling right now? Well, right now, not so great. So maybe that's why I gave the bad ratings to that. But so sleep, not so great. Work, interesting, isn't it? It was the second best pathway to not feeling good, not feeling full of the joy of living whilst working for most people. Then playing around on home computer, commuting, traveling, grooming, self-care. Apparently brushing your teeth isn't a great way to feel fantastic. Listening to the radio, other stuff, doing housework, yeah, unremarkable probably there. But then we move on to the things, though, that people rated as helping them to feel good. And there's a pretty good list here, but, you know, watching television, apparently, not that I'm promoting that, but apparently that goes all right. Reading, you can see there, reading, relaxing, doing nothing special except sleeping, because that gets woken up and it's not fun. Taking care of your children. How good is that? People said that was a way of feeling better than average. Awesome. And then, Dr. Barnett, you'll be happy about this, you know, because I know you're Dr. Veggie and all. Things like preparing food, eating, they start to feature good pathways to helping people feel better. Shopping, running errands, praying, worshiping, meditating. I love this as someone who has a great interest in exercise in particular. Walking, talking. So exercise starts to appear here. Listening to music, playing. Oh, my slide keeps jumping, sorry. Playing, talking, once again, connecting with people, exercising. Actually, I was going to leave this slide right there and say, there you go, exercising got the biggest hit. That wasn't entirely the case. I'll flash past this one really quickly. There was one other thing, apparently, that people rated as pathway to feeling pretty good. I've just put it up for a moment there, but because of social distancing, we're not going to be talking about that. But here is the point that I want to draw from this, is that, by the way, I cannot see or hear anyone there, so I'm hoping that you're laughing at my jokes. And if not, just humour me a little bit, all right? All right, a sec. Ted's there. I see his face. I couldn't hear him.
You're doing great. We're loving it.
Oh, good. All right. So,
by the way, there was an app that would buzz you. That was the whole idea.
That's correct.
It sounds like it would go off at fairly inappropriate times.
You know what? I didn't want to. I thought I won't dwell on that last one because I'm thinking the logistics of collecting that data. I just don't want to even, go there. Anyway, I'm glad you're all following.
Okay.
So this is the really fascinating thing from this this study, and the actual study was published, and it was called "A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind." And this is what they found is what you can see is, remember the third question is, are you thinking about something different to what you actually are doing right now? And here is the data. What they found is when people were mind wandering to an unpleasant place, and we can all do that, and I don't want you to do that, but when you do, unremarkably, people were reporting feeling lousy, like a 40 out of 100 or less in the feel-good scale. There are neutral places you can mind wander to. You can think about what colour carpet you're going to have, perhaps, or I don't know, what's sort of just the general, what should you do when you get home? That's just sort of neutral mind wandering. When people did that, just a little less than a 60 out of 100 on average. When people pleasant mind wandered, and we've all got those happy places we can go to, right? Haven't we? And hopefully you do. And when you do that, people were reporting almost a 70 out of 100 in how they felt. But this is the remarkable thing. When people weren't mind wandering at all, in other words, when people were what we call present, right? When they were here, in this space, engaged in what they were doing, even if the activity wasn't as pleasant as the mind wandering, pleasant, happy place they could go off to, they still reported that practice of being present, they still reported feeling their best. And so my takeaway from this is quite simple. I know it's a Sunday night for most of you, and it's a Monday morning for me. And I know that there are many places that you could be other than here with me and with the team. And I really thank you that you're here. But what I'm going to invite you to do is to be truly here. Right? I know that you've probably got a phone that might be binging at you, or, let's just put all our distractions aside. Let's just clear the headspace. And let's just be here. Let's just be present for the next, 45 minutes or so. And my take is that if you do that, the study suggests that you will actually feel better than even if you mind wander off to a pleasant place. So that's my invitation to you. And what I hope is that in the time that we have together now, that it'll actually be worth your while. I'll do my very best to make this worth your while if you'll be present with us just now. So I wanted to continue that theme of happiness. And I mean, the app was called Track My Happiness, but often, you know, I actually wrote a book. Where's my book here? I wrote a book called Live More Happy. And I know that it's meant to be live more, stop happy, because I know that grammatically that doesn't quite work. But when the editors were talking about we're going to call it that, and they said we're going to put happy in the name, I actually felt a little bit cringy almost, because I thought, you know what, when we talk about happy, people often think that it's this fluffy, superficial, sort of false smiles kind of thing, and it comes and goes, and there is a truth to that. But I want to talk about a deeper form of happiness. I want to look at really what today tends to be referred as well-being. You know, well-being, and well-being has lots of different definitions, but this is how I define well-being. I actually define it as feeling good and feeling good about life. But if you have both of those things going for you, then pretty much you have a high level of well-being. And we know that, you know, for those who have academic interests, what we know is that actually captures the two, what we call domains of well-being. Feeling good refers to what we refer to as hedonic well-being, and feeling good about life is what we call eudaimonic well-being. And it's these things, when they work together, this is when people describe, when they have these two things, they describe this deep sense of happiness. Yeah, I actually am truly happy. And in fact, the term that the scientific literature now uses is they talk about people flourishing. And so I want to look at that. What does the science say about what we can do to feel good and to feel good about life? In other words, to truly flourish. And to do that, I need to introduce you to this guy here. This guy's name is Professor Martin Sullivan. In 1997, he was voted in as the president of the American Psychological Association, which is a pretty big deal. And when you get chosen as that role, you actually get to nominate what will be the theme for your presidency, what you want to focus on. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he had a fortuitous little experience with his 5-year-old daughter, who one day said to him, "Dad, you're a psychologist," in not so many words. "Dad, you're a psychologist who, and when do you ever, and you're a big grouch." So she called him a grouch. She said, "You're a big grouch. And you told me when I was 4 that I had to stop whinging and whining. Well, why don't you stop being such a grouch and be happier?" Right? This is from his 5-year-old daughter. Anyway, he went, it was a light bulb moment for me. He said, what I realised is that as psychologists, all that I'd ever focused on, and he'd had a lucid career, all he'd ever focused on was what he called mending misery. You know, helping people who were somewhere down on the negative, you know, you want to talk a scale of 0 to 100. He was sort of focused on people that were somewhere in the negative space and just trying to creep them up to a 0, up to a normal sort of level. And what he said is, you know, what about as psychologists? When as psychologists do we actually help people and study and experiment and give them strategies to feel better than okay, right? Not just to, you know, sort of be somewhere in the middle, not just languish, but to actually thrive, to flourish. And so it was this term flourishing that he created. And he actually, through all the research and he actually created this thing called positive psychology. And the field has exploded. But what he through all the experiments being done in 2011, he actually wrote a book called Flourish. And in this book, he actually, he argued that there are 5 things that people need in their life, right? 5 components, 5 ingredients that people need to truly flourish. And so he represented this using this little acronym, which is PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. Now, if you've done the LIFT projects that Dr. Ted's already told us a little bit about, and I'll tell you a bit about it in a moment, you will already heard some of this, and you probably should be familiar with this already. But if you haven't, I'm wondering if you could think, what do you reckon PERMA might stand for? P-E-R-M-A. There, that's an acronym. And so each of those letters represents one of the ingredients of a life that truly flourishes. What do you think they might be? I have about 5 seconds to think about it. I'll just supply some background music. Dum, 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 dum. That's enough. All right, I'm not going to tell you right away, but we will discover it as we go on. Before we do, what I want to tell you is that I've met Martin Sullivan. Had a great chat with him. Here is us at a conference, and you can see in the front there, that orange book was his latest book. It was just 2 years ago, called The Hope Circuit, and it sort of represents a lot of his life work. And right, and look at that. How's that for product placement? Is my book. Anyway, chatting with Martin Seligman, I said, you know what? I love the 5 ingredients that you have of a life that flourishes, but I think they could be reordered. Anyway, we chatted about this sometime, and he said, yeah, you know what? I think you've got a case. You go for it. So with Martin Seligman's blessing, I have reordered Perma to this. Perm, okay? P-E-A-R-M. And I know that's not how you spell Perm, but that's just a visual to help you sort of, stick in your head. But the reason I've reordered this is because I think there's very good evidence from the scientific literature that some of these things are actually pathways to deeper levels of flourishing, and others are more superficial levels of flourishing or happiness, if you like. And so and all of them are important, all of them have a part to play, but I want to step down, sort of starting with, I want to finish with what we know to be the most deepest levels, the most powerful pathways to a truly flourishing life. And so let's ask the question, what does it take to flourish? All right, what do you think P stands for? And you can put this in the chat if you like. What do you think P might be in the acronym Perm? And I'm most interested in those who haven't done the Lift project and discovered this already as yet. But are you ready? Here it is. You get a big prize if you get all 5 of them right, by the way, and you haven't heard of this before. Number 1 is positive emotion. What we know is that people actually need to feel good. I defined well-being as feeling good and feeling good about life. It's those last ones, towards the R and the M in that PERM acronym that really start to address the feeling good about life part. And the E and the A a bit too. But really this first one, this positive emotion, is that feeling good. And we need pockets of that. And and I want to say make this caveat. None of us, not one person alive on this planet, can feel good 24/7. Right? So let's just make that entirely clear. That's just not a realistic goal for anyone. There are times that are really challenging. It was wise Solomon once said, there is a time for everything. There is a time to laugh. There is a time to cry as well. Sometimes we have events, we have circumstances in our lives which actually make us feel sad, and it's appropriate for a time. But it is my absolute belief and conviction that most people, most of the time, can be feeling better than they do. And that's part of my personal mission, because there is a whole lot of things that we know, evidence-based things we know, can actually help people to be in a more positive place. And I'm really, really passionate about that message, because too many people today are really struggling in terms of how they feel. And, we only have to look at the stats on, we'll take antidepressant use, for example, and I'm not against medications, by the way, at all. But we know that they have the use of antidepressants has more than doubled in the past decade. And it's and why is that? It's because people are looking for solutions. People are not feeling like they want to feel, and they're looking for solutions. In the US, it's about 1 in 8 adults are taking an antidepressant each day. In my country of Australia, it's 1 in 10. Right? So, people are looking, they're not feeling like they want to feel. We all live with this, like Anne Frank once said, we all live with this desire to be happy, to feel good. And so, this is why, as I said, I'm very, very passionate about sharing information, evidence-based, science, based information, things and strategies people can do to feel better. And there are a whole host of them. I'm going to go through these real quick. And in this Lift project that we keep talking about, this is where you learn these in earnest, and you get to practice them and put them into good stead. Here's just a couple of things that we know works for helping people to feel better, to experience more positive emotion. Number 1, and I put, Dr. Barnett, I put this as number 1 just for you, because I know this is such an important message for you, but we definitely know there's a very strong link between nutrition and how you feel. this food and mood link. In fact, one of the prominent researcher, Australian-based researcher from Deakin University, has the Food and Mood Clinic laboratory, and they actually do they've done big randomized controlled trials. We know that when people put a plant slant to the diet, they feel better. And what's really fascinating about that, we're discovering the mechanisms by which that works. And it relates to the fact that within your gut, you have a whole lot of bacteria, right? These tiny, we're talking tiny little bugs. In fact, the estimate is that we probably have about 100 trillion bacteria contained within our gut. Now, you think, oh, that sounds like a big number. Well, 100 trillion bacteria in your gut, you probably have about 10 trillion human cells in your body, right? So in other words, the take-home message is you are 10 times more microbe than you are human, right? Which is incredibly uplifting for your self-esteem, isn't it? Just to know that. But here's the point. We now know there's very much this symbiotic relationship between the health and the happiness of our gut bacteria and the health and the happiness of our body and our brain. And so this is why there's this connection between what you eat and how you feel, and certainly your health outcomes. Or the gut bacteria is just one way in which that's mediated. And so this is why putting a plant, I go into a lot of detail of this with the LIFT project, but what we know is that the gut bacteria mostly live at the end of your bowel, your intestine, your large intestine, and they love fibre. And this is why fibre, which is only found in plant foods, is such a powerful thing for keeping them happy to keep us happy too. So food feeds your mood. Put a plant slant to your diet. It can help you feel better. It works. Try it. Test it. You'll discover that's to be the case. Here's another thing we know helps people to feel better. And I call it motion creates emotion. I have come to believe, and I think there's very good evidence for this, that physical activity is perhaps one of the most powerful and yet least utilised antidepressants we have available to us. We know that physical exercise is medicine, they call it, and we know that it's medicine for our brains and our bodies. There are studies actually showing that physical activity programs are as effective for helping to manage and treat depression as is antidepressant medications. Right? Exercise is medicine. Right? It's very, very powerful. And if you were in the room with me, I wish, there's my two wishes this morning, or this evening for you. I wish we were together in the one room, but we aren't, we're a long way apart. And the other thing is I wish I had more time with you. But if we were together, I would make you, in a loving way, that sounds terrible saying make you, doesn't it? But I would strongly encourage you to follow along with this Wiggles. We're going to do it together. I know this is Zoom, but hey, I know I can't see you. You can see me, which makes this a little more embarrassing for me. But I want you to follow along the actions and listen to the words. You ready? I can see you, Ted. Listen to that and you'll have a smile. Listen. See, he's happy. Oh, look at that. All right, I'm going to pause it there. I would love to continue the whole song. Basically, the message that they're saying, that's just the Wiggles. It's probably one of Australia's greatest exports, is so true. Keep moving. We'll all be happy and bright. We now know that exercise, as I said, or just movement. Probably shouldn't even use that word exercise because I know that sounds a bit extreme for some people, but movement of the body is a very, very powerful way of helping people to experience more positive emotion. So food feeds your mood, can help you feel better. Motion creates emotion, can help you feel better. Blue and green should often be seen. I don't have the time to talk about this. I'll talk about it in the LIFT project, but we know that natural environments, getting outside, especially when the sun is shining, very, very good for helping people to feel better. We know that people need to rest to feel their best, prioritising sleep, right? Getting good rest. Very, very important for helping people to feel better. We all know this. When you are not well rested, you're not full of the joy of living, are you? You're struggling. And we know there's good studies that show this, that when people are sleep deprived, we're more reactive. The parts of your brain that are involved in sort of emotion flares up a lot more when people are sleep deprived. This is why what's the saying? Sometimes I wake up grumpy and sometimes I just let him sleep. But it's true, sometimes if we're tired, it's harder to feel and experience that positive emotion. Feelings follow your focus. This is coming out of the positive psychology space. What we know is that when people intentionally take the time to focus on positive things, unremarkably, they feel better. Right? So why wouldn't you want to do that? And we know that, focusing on positive things like what you're grateful for, this is an incredibly powerful pathway to more positive emotion. And this is the reason why. What positive emotion, what gratitude does is shift our focus from what we don't have to what we do have. And that's a complete game changer. When you give your full attention to what you're grateful for, it shifts your focus from what you don't have to what you do have. And that can be a real game changer in terms of harnessing positive emotion. Another really positive thing to think about and focus on is hope. Things that give you hope. What we know, I actually think the most tragic word in the human dictionary, or the English dictionary, is hopeless, right? Hopelessness. People need hope, and there is so much evidence for that. And at a time like this, we really need hope. We need to listen to the words of John Lennon here. He says, "Everything will be okay in the end." If it's not okay, well, it's not the end yet. All right, so hang in there. And I think this is a message that we need to hear more often. So, positive emotion. We know that for people to experiencing a flourishing life, they do need to experience positive emotion. And that can come through a whole host of those things, as well as others. I've just cherry-picked a few, but our nutrition, our movement, getting outside, focusing on positive things, making sure we sleep well. All of those things are pathways to more positive emotion, and hence can enable a more flourishing life. So we're going to have to go down the list pretty quick here, because I'd love more time with you, but P, positive emotion, important, really important. What do you think E stands for? Let me tell you, because I can't hear you anyway. It stands for engagement. What we know is that for people to really experiencing a flourishing life, what they need are those moments of what we refer to as flow. Right? It's those moments, and the researcher here was a positive psychologist by the name of Mahaya Csikszentmihalyi, and what he basically described this process whereby, when you get in that zone, we call it the zone over here. I don't know if you guys do the same, but you're doing an activity and you're just immersed in it for the sheer enjoyment of it. He talks about flow being completely involved in an activity just for its own sake. No one needs to force you to do it. The ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought flows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. I don't know about the jazz bit because I'm not much of a musician, but certainly I know there are other activities I do that I love it. I just love. Yesterday I went kite surfing with my brother. Did a 5-mile run down the ocean, just in and out the waves, and you're turning and surfing and jumping, and it just goes. You get to the end, and an hour and a half has gone past, and it's like, whoa, that was just like you're in that happy place. And what we know is that people need moments of that. You need moments of that engaging in things that just captivate you for the sheer sake of it. So it's not selfish to take moments of that, by the way. It's actually self-sustaining to do that. Right? It lifts you up, it builds you up. And as you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. So, taking moments of that is really important. So positive emotion, engagement, these are both pathways to a flourishing life, as is A. What do you think A might stand for?
I know.
You know! Oh, I spoiled it.
Oh, well.
A stands for achievement or accomplishment. And what we know, this is very fascinating. What we know is that, and the reason I put A in the sort of after P and E, is that in some ways we know that for some people at least, having a sense of achievement or accomplishment is actually a more powerful pathway to a flourishing life than is engagement or positive emotion. Here's some evidence of that. Athletes, right? Watch someone completing a fun run, right? And you see them at the end, they're like, you see, like, it's not fun anymore. I don't know why they call it fun, but it is fun. I like exercise, so don't let that deter you. But you'll see an athlete finish across the finish line and they collapse. You know, these are the highly competitive ones. And you talk to them and they go, oh, I thought I was going to die at the end of it. I was hurting all over. So is there a lot of positive emotion there? No, not at the end there wasn't. And were they engaged? And it felt like the finish line was never going to come. It just like, so in other words, it's not like time was flying by here. You know, it wasn't like they were in that happy little zone spot. So not a lot of positive emotion, not a lot of engagement. And yet, give them about 10 minutes to recover and they're planning for the next one. Why? Because there's that sense of accomplishment. There's this sense of achievement. You've done something worthwhile and constructive. And so in some ways, that sense of achievement can always trump the other things. When I was 30, this is 20 years ago now, I looked at my life and I went, what have I been doing with my time? Because my dad is he's an amazing guy. He's an electrician. He's a tradesman. He's built houses. He fixed cars. He did all that stuff. And here I was at the age of 30. All I'd done is some research projects, written theses that no one was ever going to read because they were really boring. And I thought, what have I done with my time? I need to do something to prove my manhood. And anyway, I said to my wife, I said, hey, Sarah, I think I'm going to build a house. And she's like, what? And I'm going, yeah, this will be my demonstration of manhood. And she's looking at me like, this is going to end bad, right? So anyway, we bought a plot of land. And then I drew these plans up. We designed it ourselves. I somehow got those plans passed. And then I went to work. And I can tell you for 9 months, there wasn't a lot of positive emotion. There wasn't a high level of engagements. Everything took about 4 times longer than I thought it was going to. And there were times I'm just thinking, what have I done right now? Why did I ever think this crazy thought? But what I can say is that, and we're still in the same house, yeah, when you've finished, when there's that sense of achievement, when I stand back and look at my house, like, you know, a long way back, that sense of achievement, you know, so proud. That's actually not my house. I just thought I'd throw that. My house doesn't lean anywhere near as much as that one. No, I'm only joking. Here's my house. This is my house in the background there. I built that. And there are my 3 kids too, which are all teenagers now. So this is taken a little while back, but you probably know what I'm talking about, that sense of achievement, you know, that you get, that adds to people's lives. You know, we need to be working towards worthwhile goals and mastering things, learning a new instrument. Those things make a difference, that we know that they contribute to a flourishing life. So we have P, positive emotion, E, engagement, A sense of achievement, accomplishment, and then
Well, we seem to have lost Dr. Morton.
We seem to have lost Dr. Morton. Well, we got his picture on the screen and he's frozen. So Darren, if you can hear us, which you probably can't. Well, why don't we wait till he comes back? Oh, what's going on?
Oh, are we back?
Yeah, you're there.
Great.
Wow, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, team.
Sorry, are you on a different computer now? Because you're...
No.
Oh, okay. There's 2 of you now. Oh, here we go. Now you're back. Perfect. Something happened in Australia.
Something happened in Australia. We're
Yeah.
too far. Let me share my screen again.
Well, you know, that maybe one of those undersea cables got bitten by a killer
shark.
whale or something. Yeah, right.
We actually had a shark attack here the other day.
Ooh. All right. Yeah, we were at your house.
Visiting.
Okay. So everybody
All right,
stand by. We're back. Yep.
Oh, sorry,
Perfect.
team. Sorry.
That's all right.
So R stands for, to cut to the chase, R stands for relationships. You know, and what we know is that for people to experiencing a flourishing life, they need to be connected. And you know what I think is really tragic is that nowadays so many people are disconnected. You know, in theory, we should be more connected than ever because we've got all these friends on Facebook and all the rest of it. But the data showing that things like loneliness, isolation has never been at a higher rate of prevalence. So yeah, that relationships is just so foundational and so fundamental. One of the researchers in this space is this Dr. Robert Biswas-Steiner, and he's done a lot of work, and it was him that actually identified that It doesn't matter what culture you go to. He's lived with, you know, in the slums in Mumbai. He's lived with the Inuit in Greenland. He's lived in the Kalahari with the Bushmen there. He says it doesn't matter what culture you go to, we are designed to connect, right, to exist in community. And I don't know if you're familiar with this study, but there's been some really fascinating work done by Nicholas Christakis and Fowler, who've actually found that in a social network, we are more connected than we possibly imagine. Do you know that in terms of if you have a social network, if someone in a social network becomes happier or sadder, it will influence their friends of their friends' friends. We call it 3 degrees of separation. And so, you know, this is we're more connected than we ever imagined. We influence each other, I should say, in more ways than in more profound ways than we've ever imagined, which means that we really need to prioritise this. We need to be supporting each other, and it's just so foundationally important to our flourishing life. And that's why, you know, I love. We were talking earlier with Susan and Ted about, you know, the group programs that they run. These group programs are so powerful because of the connections they create. You know, and if you're not connected, I'd really encourage you to reach out. Martin Sullivan, who I introduced you earlier, he actually says that you can know you've actually got a good social network if you have someone, at least someone that you could ring at 3 a.m. in the morning if you needed to. Right? That's probably a good litmus test. You know, and I'm hoping that you've got people like that. If not, hey, you know what? Reach out and do it in a real life way. Not over Facebook. You can have hundreds and hundreds of friends on Facebook. It's not the same as having authentic friends and connection. I know that COVID's making that really challenging at the moment. You know, so obviously we need to do this in responsible ways, but stay connected. That's probably the takeaway message. And so, what does it take to flourish? Positive emotion. Eat well, move, get outside, think on positive things, sleep well. Engagement, you know, do those things that you love to do, at least every now and then, right? It's important for your well-being. Have those things that you're working towards that you can achieve and tick the list off, you know, that you accomplish, that you get a sense of mastery. Really prioritize your relationships, right? Get connected, stay connected. And then last of all, and I actually believe, and I think there's really good evidence for this, that what the science seems to suggest is that for people to experience, right, this truly deepest levels of flourishing, really what they need is this M in their life. And what does M stand for? Well, it stands for meaning. And I love how Martin Seligman defines meaning. And in fact, people have done more work since him, but this is how he defined meaning. He says, meaning is all about belonging to and serving something bigger than yourself. Right? It's about identifying your why that is bigger than I. Right? Because what we know is that when people have that sense of, you know, I belong to a cause, you know, bigger than myself, that I'm contributing to a cause bigger than myself, what it does is make their life deeply meaningful. You know, and I've actually met people who, when they have this going for them, you know, some of the other parts, like positive, they might not be experiencing a whole lot of positive emotion at that moment in time, or they might not be experiencing a lot of achievement, or maybe even their relationships aren't going great at the moment. But when they have this deep sense of belonging to and serving something bigger than themselves, they can often even still report and say, you know what, I'm doing pretty good. You know, I actually feel like my well-being's going pretty good. I mean, there are areas I'd like to improve upon, but I'm doing okay. And so, you know, I ask you, do you belong to, you know, a community, a group? Do you know, and it might be a community interest group, it might be whatever. Do you have that sense of belonging to something? Do you give back to that in some way? Do you have some sort of thing that you contribute to? And, you know, I come from a worldview that says that every single person alive has some contribution to make. There's something you can do. And that, making that contribution is probably the best thing that we can do for our own well-being. You know, we rise by lifting others. Right? And when people have that sense of giving back, right, when it's not about them, it's actually about others, that's when life really starts to come alive. Certainly, I know I have the great good fortune to meet inspiring people, you know, that I love to hear their stories. And invariably, the people who have the deepest levels of well-being, that you know, are really flourishing, are those who have an orientation towards other people as compared to themselves, right? You know, we're not here, we make a, let's say, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And so, you know, that whole giving is living. This is one of the last lessons I talk about in the Lift project. I'm interested, since Martin Sullivan made that definition, there's actually been some further exploration on that. And this lady, Emily Stoney Smith, who talked about there's actually, it seems, 4 pathways to a meaningful life. It's that belonging, once again, belonging to something bigger than ourselves. It's that sense of purpose, which comes through serving or contributing to something bigger than ourselves. It's about having transcendent moments as well. You know, and those transcendent moments are when we get lifted above the ordinary of the day-to-day stuff that's going on, when we can actually see something bigger than ourselves. You know, we get pulled out from amongst the trees and we can see the forest. You know, and people will experience that in different ways. You know, I remember the first time going to, I've only been there once actually, to the Grand Canyon, you know, where you walk out and you just go, you just have to stop for a while. You know, you just have to, it's a transcendent moment. You have to soak it in. For others, it might be, say, you know, spiritual practices, worship experiences. These are transcendent. They get lifted above. And so these are all pathways. And this last one that she defines, I love this whole idea of what she calls storytelling. And what we know is that story is so incredibly powerful. When people recognise that they have a story that's being told, right? They're actually the author to a large extent of their own narrative. You know, this story that's being told. What is your life? What is the story of your life? You know, what does it stand for? What does it look like? And particularly when people recognise that their story fits within a bigger narrative, right? It's bigger than themselves. Then that is a very deep and powerful way to experience meaning in their life. And so what are the 5 pathways to a flourishing life? Well, it's about experiencing positive emotion, feeling good. We need to feel good, right? It's important to have moments at least like that, recognising that we can't have that, you know, 24/7. But then experiencing engagement, things we're into, sense of achievement, mastery, positive relationships, and then that sense of meaning in our life. And so my question to you is, when you look down that list, how are you doing? How are you doing? I know that, you know, seriously, these are really challenging times around the world. We live in many crises, but there are things that we can do, you know, to enact and to bolster up, to enable these things, these areas. And I'd really encourage you to take steps towards doing that, because when we're flourishing, you know, it's like we have a full cup and we can pour from that. As I made that comment, you know, a little while ago, that, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so, you know, one of the most important things that you can do is to make sure that you're, you know, do what you need to do to be happy, you know, to actually to keep flourishing, so that you can also give. Yeah, that's my hope for you. And so let me just share with you to finish off. I want to tell you about the Lift project. All the things that I've just been speaking about, I've been cherry picking things from everywhere because of the short time we have together, but I'm super passionate about sharing these insights with others. And in fact, about 18 months ago now, we officially launched this thing called the Lift project, which is a 10-week group-based experience where people go through and they learn all the science underpinning what I've spoken about in a simple and fun way. And then we say, well, you know what? If the science says that there are things that you can do to feel better and to feel better about life, let's experiment.
Darren, yeah. Can you uncover the bottom? You've got your dock is sitting there. Maybe move your mouse.
Is that what? Yeah, how do I do that? Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's right. If you can't, that's okay.
Yeah. Not sure how to do that, but anyway, the Lift project, it's a 10-week educational adventure where you go on with a group of people and you get led through the process where you discover all of these things and you get to experiment with, you know, as I said, what it takes to lift your mood in your life. And so I think, you know, Dr. Barnett, I'll tell you a little bit about more that in the moment. You'll recognise that these are the lessons we cover. We learn all about how your emotional brain works. Motion creates emotion. Some of these things you would have recognised. But what we know is that this works for people. We've actually done several randomised control trials now, or 2 randomised control trials, number of publications showing that when people engage with this, On average, they experience about a 30 to 40% reduction in depression, anxiety, and stress symptoms, and significant improvements in their life satisfaction and their mental health and vitality. So I went a little bit over time, and I'm sorry because I get pretty excited about this stuff, and that was me trying to keep it short. So sorry, team, but I'll stop sharing my screen, and I think we've got a little bit of time for questions.
Yeah, that was wonderful, Darren. Thank you so much. And just yeah, and Susan. Just to remind people, if you're interested in doing the LIFT program with us at Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, we have wonderful facilitators who will join you. And the next group is starts on February 2nd, which is a Tuesday, and that'll be at 7:30 in the evening. And Darren, I had a question for you. Why did you rearrange Perma? Yeah,
because I think that I actually think there's really good evidence to show that it's those relationships and particularly meaning that actually set people up for the best levels of flourishing. And I think that, in fact, it was interesting. It's been a bit of an evolving acronym even for Martin Sullivan. In his original work back in the early 2000s, he said it was about positive emotion, although back then he called it pleasure, interestingly enough. And he got a lot of criticism because pleasure is never permanent, right? Laughter is never limitless. And pleasure is just one aspect of positive emotion. Now, there are a whole lot of other positive emotions like, peace, calm, all these things that they're good states to experience. So anyway, he had, in the early stages, all he had was pleasure, engagement, and meaning. And then what he realized, people said to him, where are relationships in that? And he went, oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And so he put R in there, and he did have Perm. So he actually had PERM for a while. And then at the end, someone said, oh, and it actually came from corporate world, said, oh, achievement's a really big deal. And some people are quite critical that he included that, but he ended up by tacking it onto the end. And so that's how you got Perma. I just think it fits better with me, and it's just my completely biased opinion. But I think that's a better way to pitch it. That said, that they sometimes have Perma with a capital P, because at the end of the day, most of what we do, even if it's things that we engage us, or that sense of achievement, or our positive relationships, or that sense of of meaning, they're actually all vehicles to positive emotion as well. So in some ways, the P is the trump card, but I think that R and M and some of those are more deeper ways to achieve it, experience it.
Interesting. Susan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So, it seems like some people are just sort of naturally happier than others. And so, I think there's a certain genetic component that plays into some of these things. Yes. But what we've learned in other realms of lifestyle medicine is that what you do really impacts the genetic piece of it. And I was wondering if you can talk about like how much of this flourishing is in your genes, and then how much of it is what you do with it.
I love that you've asked that question. And we didn't prompt this, by the way, just for the people listening on. I think it's a great question. And look, in the LIFT project, when I was developing that, the current state of knowledge or the consensus was that about 50% of your enduring happiness, they call it, or really what you're flourishing, about 50% is genetically determined. So that's what this is what the psychologists would say. They then say about 10% is based on your circumstances. And then they say that about 40% relates to your intentional activity. So, the things that you choose. So you can control effectively about 40% of your flourishing. I think, and I say this in the LIFT project, but I don't agree with those numbers. I think that, as you've just pointed out, the science of epigenetics is showing that our choices have an impact on our gene expression. And so I actually think that in time, the genetic contribution, which is sort of nominated as 50%, I think that's going to reduce. And in fact, there was a paper that came out not just recently indicating that they were saying about 40%. So I'm watching that creep down already. I think, though, that circumstances, to be honest, plays a bigger role than what they say. I mean, they're talking about 10%. I think that when we look at things like what's happening with COVID, as an example, around the world, it's pretty consistent that, in Australia, in the US, the prevalence of depression and anxiety has doubled, more than doubled. And we're seeing that as a consistent trend. Why? Because the circumstances of people's lives have changed. So I actually think, my estimation, I think that the genetic component we're going to see reduce. I think the circumstances is bigger than that 10%, but I still think probably about half of it is up to us. We get to choose about half of our happiness, which is a big chunk. And you know what, for me, that the takeaway message is, hey, if all of us want to be happy, that's what we live with the desire to be, then let's get educated on how to choose well. And that's really what the Lift Project's all about.
Darren, the questions started off slow, but now they're pouring in. So here's one you can probably give quickly. Since you have more sunshine and vitamin D in Australia than we do in Rochester, New York, should it be Perm D?
That's a good question, and it's true. I mean, I don't know. I actually haven't visited Rochester, but I certainly know that we're all familiar with SAD, seasonal affective disorder, which is a real problem, particularly for people living up in high latitudes. I suppose that the takeaway is get access to as much natural light as you can when you can, and even outside on overcast days, there's more natural light out there. There's more intensity of light than even indoors. So I think the real problem we're facing is that even in countries like Australia, they sometimes refer to Australia as the sunburnt country. We get a lot of sun, but we have particularly young people spending all their time indoors. They're on screens. It's a real problem. So we're facing the same concerns. It's like we're creating artificial SAD, and it need not happen.
Yeah, nature deficit disorder.
Yeah.
Well, Susan will tell you, she took our course when we started giving it back in 2012. And there's one quote that almost everybody who's taken our course can give you, which is, eat more fruits and vegetables and go outside and run around.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying for years. So here's a question. Someone asked, is the LIFT program basically lectures like today, or is it experiential?
So I think, I actually come from an education background. We know that in order to learn, you need to do. So I actually have my educational framework that I work with is a little acronym. You might get the idea that I like acronyms. I'm not a massive fan of acronyms, but I use one for this. The acronym is LETS, L-E-T-S, and that stands for learn, experience, think, and share. And so I think the best learning outcomes, and even from a behaviour change point of view, people need to learn things, but then they need to experience it. For something to be transformative, you need to experience it. So it's very experiential, the LIFT project. So what happens with the LIFT project is that each of the 10 weeks, we focus on one topic and we say, we're going to learn what the science says about this topic and how it can help you to feel better. So you learn the science, and there's a video presentation, about 20 minutes that goes from me, and I do some experiments on a colleague of mine. We have a bit of fun with that to prove the points I'm making. There's also the opportunity to read about it in more detail or to listen to an extended audio version that I've created. So you learn it, but then what we do is we say, well, if the science says that can help you feel better, let's put it into practice. Let's have a go at it for 1 week. Let's try it. And so we have a variety of different activities that we test out. Things like, seeing a sunrise. Things like, moving more. Things like giving compliments to people. Identifying what your signature strengths are. There's a whole host of them. Preparing and sharing a plant-based meal with someone. So yeah, we learn about it. We experience it. Then you get to think and reflect how that worked with you, and that's the importance of a group-based session where you get to debrief. And then the S is all about sharing it. Now, what I say to my students here at the university, and I'm based, the best way to learn anything is to teach it. And so what we want is for people to become custodians of this, these knowledge and these experiences, and share them with other people who might be able to benefit too.
Yeah, and of course, the way we run it, just as you said, there's a short video, and then there's interaction as a group, and of course there's homework, so people are expected to do things off camera on their own, like complimenting.
Fun homework.
Like homework, fun homework, you get homework. Yeah,
Fun homework.
Right. And we also run an alumni group called Flourish for people who've already been through Lift, because you give us access. Everybody has access to the videos for I think a year.
That's correct.
So there are people who did it, and then they like it so much they want to do it again. So it's an alumni group. It's called Flourish, and they go through the videos again because they're become so devoted to it. It's really fun. Yeah, yeah. Susan, did you have another question or point?
Yeah, one that I think kind of gets to the circumstances that we're in with COVID. One person asked about how unemployment impacts people's sense of well-being, and could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean that's a deep topic that we could talk about in some depth, but obviously there are a whole host of factors that come along with unemployment. For example, even that sense of identity, and contribution. So, as I said, there are no easy answers for some of these things. What we know is that for example, if you're facing unemployment, certainly if you can be reaching out, even if it's volunteering in some way, just to keep doing, particularly if you're an achievement-orientated person. But what we know is that regardless of what circumstances you're in, practicing some of those other things that I've just briefly touched on, that whole idea of actually focusing still on things that you're grateful for, retaining a sense of hope, eating well, moving well, getting outside, connecting with friends, all of these things are actually they probably become even more important. And obviously the challenge is, and I like the fact, Ted, that you pointed, I completely agree with the comment you made earlier, and that is that there is now no one can refute the power of lifestyle medicine. The studies are there, that the data is just overwhelmingly. The question is, how do we enable people to engage with it, in the most meaningful way? And that's where the learnings need to take place. And what you guys are doing at Rochester there is a great model. I think that's it's really leading the way in terms of these group-based activities, getting people connected into uplifting communities, really. So I can't say a lot. Seriously, my heart really goes out for so many people. I mean, so many people are doing it really tough. But in those circumstances, I can't encourage you enough to do what you can to stay buoyed. It becomes all more important.
Yeah, and a lot of people are actually finding Lift is beneficial, particularly beneficial in these very stressful times. We have a lot of healthcare workers who are dealing with the stresses in the hospital, and to take that time out, once a week to spend an hour with people who you can have these conversations with. And if you're unemployed, the same kind of stresses. You know what they say, if you don't have 15 minutes to meditate, you need half an hour. So we try to be here for people to engage and to, you can share your troubles. That's what we're here for. And I have to say, what Darren has put together is just amazing. And to be able to tackle all those pillars of lifestyle medicine with friends is really fabulous. So we love it. So, yeah. Susan, you look like you had something on your mind there.
No, I just, it's a fabulous program. I mean, it's it's a wonderful series of activities, lectures, and so forth that are just wonderful.
Actually, there's a couple of very specific sort of housekeeping questions. One of it is, does Flourish or Lift offer a social software platform for participants to engage in as a group and personal content resource, or more of a course? Well, you certainly have, the videos are available anytime once you sign up, right, Darren? There's,
right.
Yeah. So once you've signed up, you can go to Darren's website and view their learning, use their learning management system to view the videos on your own. And there's more to read. And I think is there an app? I'm trying to remember.
It's accessible on a smartphone, but it's not an app actually.
Oh, that's right. There's sort of podcasting, I believe.
Yeah. So I should mention this. So the Lift project is actually obviously something I'm very, very passionate about. I on my heart is I just feel like the world needs a lift, and so really the big, hairy, audacious goal that I've got, and this is I think in the title of when you guys advertise this, is to lift 10 million lives worldwide. And so really what we do is we have Lift that operates in 4 different areas. So it's in healthcare settings like you guys are doing, in schools. So actually I'm very, very passionate about getting the Lift project into schools. And so we now have it set up as a grade 10 curriculum package that teachers can use for their kids. We then have it in workplaces. So we're doing increasing amount of work using it as a workplace wellbeing initiative, with some really positive outcomes there. And then the last one is just to community groups, which is sort of a bit of an overlay between what you guys are doing in that both healthcare and community space. So yeah, the big goal is in the next 10 years to lift 10 million lives. We're up to about 15,000 participants so far. But
you're almost there. You're almost there.
Almost there. So close.
That's right.
But we're only just over a year, about 18 months in. So we're hoping that the thing just gains more momentum. But for me, this is a labour of love. And yeah, there's just such a need for this at the moment. So if anyone can be supportive of helping to communicate it and get it out there, we really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, that's what we're here for. And there's one more question that says, do I teach the classes? I might pop my head in, but we do have some wonderful facilitators who run those the Lift program classes. Well, Darren, do you have any parting words? We've kind of run over time and it's been so much fun. What would you like to say for us to take home with us?
Yeah, I think, look, as I said at the start, my heart really goes out, particularly for those in the US, that our hearts are really with you in terms of we know how hard you guys are doing it. So, in the midst of that, do all that you can to stay buoyed. And we definitely know that there are positive things that you can do despite your circumstances, but that you might be experiencing to be in a better place. And that's a really worthwhile and valuable thing to do. So blessings to you, brothers and sisters. And yeah, I really value your time. Thanks for being with us. I hope that you're able to stay in that space with us for the period. But yeah, I hope you benefited from it.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Well,
Dr. Morton, stay well. Yeah, thank you, Susan. And thank you to our engineer, Bob. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
See ya.